Can you move your camera down just a bit?
There you go.
Thank you.
No, this is the exact time it's in the municipality. My lord, Arthur Infant.
Hi, Adam.
Hey, Nicole.
No, it's probably back in. That one was that one, yeah, that one, yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5 o'clock on June 12th, 2024 in the council chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. Roll call this evening, Deputy Mayor Clark,
Present.
Councillor Blackwell,
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger,
Present.
Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Pranger,
Present.
Councillor Steinoff Gray,
Present.
Councillor Stewart. Bill, say hello. You're muted, Councillor.
I think we know he's present.
So we know that you're here. We can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you yet. Okay, good. Also like to acknowledge the staff and a large contingent in our public gallery tonight. Councillor Blackwell, please.
As representatives of the municipality, we have been entrusted to act as stewards for the community in which we live and work. We recognize the importance of learning the full history of this land, our place within its long story, and our responsibility as treaty people. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nations and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous people have made and continue to make, both in caring for this land and strengthening our communities and respective nations. As a public service organization, we are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda the council members have? And I would remind you to disclose any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof, either now or as it arises in the meeting. So we have the adoption of the minutes from our regular and special meetings of council. I need a mover and seconder that the minutes of the council meeting held on May 22nd, 2024 and June 5, 2024 be adopted as printed. Councillors Hinchberger and Kavanaugh, all in favor? And that's carried. Some presentations this evening. Excellent. So we have an awesome group of young men and their coaches here this evening. And we are here to celebrate the U13 Ontario Minor Hockey Association champions. So after going undefeated in the playoffs, followed by a tough playoff round with their arch rivals from Walkerton, the Kincardine U13 Legion Branch 183 Canucks were crowned U13 Tier 1 Western Ontario Athletic Association hockey champions. Well done. But it did not stop there. That championship earned them a berth in the All-Ontario Finals. Players, coaches, parents, siblings, grandparents. Well done, grandparents. Good for you. Relatives and friends loaded up their gear to make the 6-hour journey down the 401 to Kingston to see how they'd stack up against the top 8 teams in the province. So they played Lambton Shores Predators, Port Colborne Sailors, and Clearview Canucks, winning all 3 of those games in the round robin. And they advanced to the semifinal on Sunday morning against the Highland Storm, to which they had a successful game, and they moved on to the All-Ontario Finals later that afternoon. So the undefeated Canucks would once again face off against the Clearview Canucks, to determine who is the top team in the province. And after a back and forth game that kept the fans entertained, to say the least, the Kincardine U13 Canucks came out with a victorious 5-4 win, which means they were the Ontario Minor Hockey Association U13 All-Ontario champions. What a great way to finish a remarkable season, going undefeated the entire playoffs and bringing the championship back to Kincardine where it belongs. So we'd like to extend from the municipality our congratulations and acknowledge that excellent achievement, being the U13 provincial champions. So I will pass the microphone off to Anne Marie, and she's going to call out your names and we'll whirl up. And if there's anybody wants to take a quick picture with yourself and the mayor, why would you? I'm not sure, but here we go anyway. So
All right, we're going to recognize each individual athlete this evening, and I'm going to ask that you hold your applause until the very end for us. So, Knox Cowlick, come on up. Jack Moak. Paul Wilsack. Andrew Humphrey. Dylan Savage. Hayden Adams. Damian Sidlowski. Jacob Jinman. Sam Humphrey. Colby Walton. Colton Bernard.
see that we buy good quality plaques.
Yes, yes, we did. Owen Burton. Brady Collins. Colden Dalton. Sheldon Holt. And we also want to recognize Coach Jared Adams. And Coach Brett Walton. Our trainer, Tom Humphrey. And the guy who pulls it all together, the team manager, Jason Holt. So big round of applause to our U13 champions. We're gonna head outside.
Yes, time out. Back.
Yep, you can always tell how interested they are in civics because 2 seconds after the presentations are done, they all leave. So anyway, our congratulations are extended to this provincial championship team. Well done to the players, coaches, parents, and grandparents. All right, this evening we have a public meeting. We have an applicant, Paul and Taryn Uchorn, and our planner, Jake Boosfield Batisto, will explain the report and receive comments. And I would like to note that there is a sheet in the desk just outside the door. Anyone who is interested in receiving comments regarding this meeting or the application, if you please sign that sheet before you leave. If you're already getting the information, that's you're on the list. But if there's anyone who has not been receiving the information and would like to please sign the sheet outside the entrance here. Jake, good evening, welcome.
There? Yeah, okay. All right, so the proposal before you tonight is for the rezoning to facilitate a surplus farm dwelling severance just west of Burvey. The severance is being considered by the county at a later date, but that will be for a roughly 3/4 hectare parcel containing the dwelling. That would leave a remaining 60 hectare farm parcel. The required rezoning would do two things. First, prohibit residential dwellings on the retained farm parcel in order for it to be compliant with policies for these kinds of severances. And second, apply a holding to the lands containing high archaeological potential. The EP zones on the land would remain unchanged. Given the position right on Highway 9, MTO was circulated for comments. They've provided draft conditions, which would be attached to the severance later on to ensure access concerns are addressed. So given that, they had no major issues. So given all the above, the proposal is consistent with agricultural and land division policies within the provincial policy statement and the Bruce County official plan. Given that, staff are of the opinion that the application be approved. I'll leave it there for tonight, but I'm happy to answer questions when we get there.
Thank you, Jake, for that presentation. And I will, council will have opportunity to ask those questions in just a moment. Now it's opportunity for anyone from the public to make presentation. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this application? Applicant? Is the applicant here? Would you like to make a presentation, or are you satisfied with Jake's presentation? We good? Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak to this application? Okay, seeing none, members of council, are there any questions or comments, clarification needed? Okay, seeing none. I need a mover and seconder. The council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2024-011 for Paul and Taryn Uchuern from 5031 Highway 9, Municipality of Kincardine, moved by councillors Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Prenger. Any further discussion? Thank you, Jake, for the presentation. The package that we get previous to this conversation is very thorough. We appreciate it. So it's not that council doesn't know what's going on. We've all read an in-depth report on what's happening here. So so all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We have a presentation this evening, a delegation from Megan Durkin and Christina Rupawai regarding the SRO in schools. Megan, Meg, and Christina, welcome. I'm sure the clerk informed you of the time constraints that delegations face, so time starts now.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and staff for your time today. My name is Meg Durkin, and this is my friend Christina Ropawahi. We are active community members from Wards 1 and 3, and we are representing concerned residents, business owners, and parents focused on youth well-being in Kincardine. Next slide, please. We are here to express our support for the decision that was made by Council on March 27th not to enter into a new 3-year agreement for an OPP school resource officer. We appreciated the thorough discussions on March 13th and 27th. Your decision demonstrates a commitment to fiscal responsibility and alignment with strategic objectives, given the lack of data on the program's effectiveness. Next slide, please. Bylaw 2022-086, an agreement between the Municipality of Kincardine and the Solicitor General in regards to the Community Safety and Policing Grant. estimates that the program's annual costs at about $77,000 per year to the municipality of Kincardine. Each year, council's budget decisions aim to balance community vibrancy and safety with fiscal responsibility, aligning with responsible governance and informed decision-making principles. Kincardines Integrated Strategy 2.0 set supporting responsible and effective government as a core focus for 2023 and 2024. Ensuring the municipality provides value for money and long-term sustainability was set as a key strategic objective. Informed decision-making is a guiding principle council and staff use to meet this objective. Next slide, please.
So as Councillor Stewart noted, we do not have a clear picture of the job description for this role. And without a clear outline of what tasks and responsibilities are being undertaken, it's difficult to ascertain whether this program is meeting its stated objectives. Research on Ontario's SRO programs are inclusive. So while there are stats on the number of calls that are responded to each year, a comprehensive study on the impact of our local program has not been conducted. What studies do indicate is a potential negative impact on the school climate, which disproportionately impacts Black, Brown, and Indigenous students, suggesting that the program may criminalize adolescent behavior. And despite some positive individual experiences, systemic inequities must be addressed. Next slide, please. So, to our ask, we would urge council to not reconsider their March decision. Instead, we would recommend reinvesting these funds into initiatives that support youth, such as culturally relevant counseling or additional after-school programs, aligning with students' expressed needs and promoting an equitable support in education. Thank you for your time today.
So thank you for the presentation. And as with other delegations, there's opportunity for questions to clarify a point, but it's not a debate or it doesn't become a he said, she said thing. So if there's questions to clarify anything that Meg or Christina commented, you have that opportunity. If not, then thank you for your presentation and appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you hear
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Prenger, I'm sorry.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I would like a clarification on something in the presentation. We're just bringing it back up so I can make sure I get it right. I wrote it down, but next slide, I think. Sorry, the next one. Yeah, thank you. You mentioned that there is evidence of negative impact on school climate and potential for criminalization of youth behavior. I'm just wondering if we don't have any studies or anything, where's that evidence coming from? And what is the evidence exactly?
So I could certainly provide a link to potential evidence, but do I have cited off the top of my head? No, I do not. If we could go back to that slide, I would like to mention that specifically it says we don't have information within our community, concrete information of the impact, whereas we have more of a global impact on police in schools.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Moving on, matters for discussion and direction, staff reports. Need a mover and seconder that council approve the 2023 consolidated financial statements as presented, moved by councillors Kavanaugh and Blackwell. And I would refer to our Director of Corporate Services, Roxana Bauman. Good evening.
Good evening. Through you, Chair. So the audited financial statements are attached to this report. As you know, they're consolidated with Saugeen Mobility Regional Transit and Basra, as well as our investment in Bruce Telecom and Westario Power as well. The financial statements do include a variance report as an appendix, so that provides
provides council with a lot of detail on what the changes were. There's 3 different types of reports. There's one for the statement of operations, and that is comparing the prior year actuals to current year actuals, I should say 2022 to 2023. There's also a budget analysis as well, which is comparing the actuals to the budget, and as well as the balance sheet. There's a comparison there as well from current to prior year. So the audit fieldwork is done. The auditors have provided an unqualified opinion, and we have the partner here, Matt Beddick, who will be going over his audit findings report. So if it's okay, I will turn it over to Matt.
Good evening, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks, Roxana. So thank you for inviting me and letting me present here today. I'll take a few minutes to walk through our report. I do understand that council has a full agenda today, and I'll expect that council has at least had a chance to glimpse through our report, so I will touch on the highlights without dwelling on anything in too much detail. If you may, and at the direction of council, I'm happy to take questions as I go along, but certainly there'll be a moment at the end of the presentation to take questions. As Roxana said, we are in a position to issue a clean audit opinion, which is what you would expect for your financial statements. They are required to be presented to the public as well as filed with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and a clean audit opinion is what you like. As I go through the presentation, I will identify a few other things that I believe council can take from our presentation as it relates to not only the financial statements themselves, but also to the underlying records that are maintained by the municipality and its finance team. And in that, I would like to thank Roxana and Shelby and the rest of the team here for the cooperation that they provided us in completing our work. We couldn't have gotten here today without them. So as I move quickly through here, I'll touch on the status. As I've said, we are in a position to issue a clean audit opinion. There are a handful of things that we'll need to complete, including having council approve the draft financial statements, which we expect to happen at this meeting, and then we'll issue the financial statements in the coming days. We are required at the start of any audit to determine what we refer to in the audit world as materiality, and we're required to communicate that to council for the basis of our work. Materiality has 2 components, or 2 sources, or 2 purposes. One is to determine the extent of testing that we do in our audit, as well as the how we would evaluate if there are any uncorrected amounts in the financial statements, but yet give a clean audit opinion. We've set materiality at $875,000, which is up slightly over the prior year. Materiality is based on a percentage of the municipality's revenues, which is consistent with how we would do audits for municipalities in the province of Ontario. Oftentimes I get asked the question that materiality, in this case almost $900,000 or $1 million, is a really big number. And people say, well, what if you find mistakes or things less than that number? And we certainly do. We have a threshold that's 5% of that figure to accumulate differences to the financial statements that we require corrected. And we do recognize that the municipality, both council and staff, will manage the operations of the municipality to a much greater level of precision. But I would ask you, when you look at these financial statements, if your revenues or expenses were sort of higher or lower by up to $900,000, would somebody looking at your financial statements come to a different conclusion as to the size and scope of the operation? And when we think about it from that perspective, we think not. This slide here, despite the many, many words on it, is short for saying we are required to think about and respond to the potential risk there could be intentional misstatement and misrepresentation in the accounts. This is not unique to the municipality of Kincardine. We have to do this for every single audit in Canada. And based on the steps and procedures that we've found, we didn't find any issues of intentional misstatement. The next slide deals with a new standard that the municipality was required to adopt in its financial statements this year, and that's what we refer to as asset retirement obligations. And in short, this is liabilities that the municipality has to decommission or take out of service certain assets. One being the rest or the closure and post-closure costs for the landfill site. Others primarily related to future asbestos removal in city-owned properties. There were new rules on how these are to be determined and calculated this year. We've been through the work that the staff has performed. They engaged outside consultants as well to assist. It did result in additional liabilities being recorded this year of about $3.2 million, and those will be paid for well into the future, the most significant being the active landfill site. I'll skip over the next slide because it's not a lot going on there. The next section here deals with obligatory reserve funds and deferred revenue. And really what we're talking about here are development charges. And I'll remind council that development charges are shown in the financial statements on a different timeline than perhaps collected. So when you collect development charges, they actually sit as a liability in your financial statements and don't get shown as revenue until such time as the development related expenditures are incurred. So what we do is we test both the inflows and outflows of the DC Reserve Fund to make sure that's being adhered to. Tangible capital assets are the largest single item on the municipality's financial statements and comprise your roads, bridges, buildings, trucks, furniture and fixtures, computers, and the like. We do spend some of our effort looking at amounts that are purchased through capital, making sure that they are appropriate capital assets and are put on the statement of financial position as such, as well as looking at the amortization expense and how those are being sort of drawn down over time. Post-employment benefits are health and dental benefits that are provided to early retirees in certain cases, as well as WSIB benefits, which we refer to as compensated absences. These benefits and the calculation and determination of those in the financial statements are required to be assisted with a third-party actuary. We've worked with that actuary and ensured that their work was appropriate as well. On this slide, we've just provided a little bit of information about whether there are corrected or uncorrected amounts in the financial statements. So currently there is approximately $122,000 from last year that should have been included in income, but was only included in income this year. This was a minor oversight, well below the materiality figure that I discussed before. And just provide this in a different format. And the last slide here that I'll touch on, the second last slide, is control deficiencies. So we're required to identify if there are significant deficiencies in control and report those, and we're happy to say there are none. So I said before, I'll sort of provide a few things that council can take from this. So A, we have a clean audit opinion. B, our uncorrected amounts are very small, and we have no significant control deficiencies. All right, so those are things as a whole sort of speak to the overall preparation of the accounts and the ability for council to rely on those accounts, not just in these financial statements, but perhaps throughout the year. I will touch on one more matter here. The very bottom, again, pardon the small print. Roxana did mention the municipality's ownership in Bruce Telecom, and as council right know that entity was sold with the closing date of March the 28th. We're currently on the conduct of the audit of the accounts of March 28th of Bruce Telecom. That will be wrapping up within the next month. And the results of the sale of that will be reflected in the 2004 financial statements. So with that, I will pause and back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you so much for that report, Matt. And I will open the floor. Are there any comments or questions from councillors regarding the financial statements? Oh, Councillor Stewart.
Can you hear me now?
Loud, loud, loud and clear.
Okay, I'll pull it back a bit. Thank you very much. Roxanne and Matt, great report. I'm looking forward. I guess we're just going to approve the draft tonight, and then we'll see the final copy. Just a couple of things. I noticed that in Note 8, the transportation services were up about 4% over last year, expenses. Environmental services were up 10%. That was Note 9. Recreation and cultural services were up 8%. There seems to be some explanatory, but I like to investigate those further. I hate to see those costs going up that high every year, but that will be done when we finally get the final report. So it's just a draft approval tonight. Thank you.
Roxana, your face is telling me something different. What are you? We are not approving a draft. This is the final approval of our 2023 financial statements.
Through you, Chair, that is correct. You're seeing the draft just because it requires council approval to then finalize the financial statements. And this variance analysis, that is the final variance analysis because we don't expect the numbers to change. So this is the explanation. But if council has additional questions on any of the variances, I would be happy to provide it later on.
Just to repeat, thank you very
Councillor-
much. What I was
Stewart,
trying to say is I'm waiting for the hard copy. Thank you.
And that would be provided at your request of the Corporate Services Department. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, and thank you for the excellent report. I have a comment. It's actually related to something that isn't quite of like discussed openly, is about the operating surplus and what happened. And for the sake of discussion, I'd like to propose to council that we move to direct staff to transfer the annual operating surplus for 2023 to the Life Cycle Reserve Fund RF 82 rather than the capital/contingency reserve as is normally the case.
With respect, there's
On his-
two different motions available here.
Okay.
You can approve it and still make that motion following.
I will do that.
Just because we have approved them doesn't
Yep.
mean that we have limited that option of addressing what your suggestion may be.
Procedurally, I can do this after we
Yeah.
disposition this motion.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Any further questions regarding the financial reports? Okay, we have a mover and seconder that we approve them. All in favor? And that is carried.
Thank you.
Would you like to provide notice of motion?
I will provide well, actually, if you're going to ask me to provide
When-
notice of
when we get
motion,
to
I'll
that
do it later.
section.
I will, that's fine. It doesn't really matter when it happens and I'll wait till then.
We have a resolution. We need a mover and seconder that council approve the charging of interest as per section 26.3 for development that is eligible under sections 26.1 and 26.2 of the Development Charges Act, effective as of June 1st, 2022, and at a rate of average prime plus 1%. And that council repeals the former development charges interest policy GG 2.24. And further, the council approved the attached new development charges interest policy to administer the charging of interest, moved by councillors Blackwell and Kavanaugh. Could you explain briefly the intent and outcome of should we pass this bylaw? Thank you, Roxanne.
Through you, Chair. So, so the reason this is being brought forward is because we had an older policy that was put together prior to a prescribed rate of interest being available in the legislation. So most municipalities had to come up with their own interest rate policy for development charges in the meantime. So we did that through the old policy, which was set at 5%. And then through additional changes to legislation, the government came out with a prescribed maximum rate of interest. And so that's outlined in the policy. And so the main purpose of this lengthy report is to just to have council be aligned with the new prescribed rate as opposed to using an old outdated rate, which really we can't use anyways. So that is the purpose of the policy being brought forward.
Any further questions? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. This is relevant perhaps, but it may not seem that way at first. Has affordable rental unit been formally defined at this point in legislation?
Through you, Chair, yes, I believe so, because as of June 1st, there is a threshold for that now, for that. It's not the attainable, but it's the affordable definition has been included.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, just to follow up, and based on that, the interest on a deferred or an affordable rental unit wouldn't have any development charges, or if they were, they wouldn't pay interest on those deferrals. Is that correct?
For myself off. So if it's an affordable rental unit, then there would be no development charges applicable. And just for clarification, our own development charges bylaw doesn't impose development charges on institutional developments either. So really, you're only looking at a small portion of the rental housing developments that would be applicable under the 26.1 section.
All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Traffic and parking bylaw amendment, Kincardine Avenue, South Line. Need a mover and seconder. The council approve an amendment to the traffic and parking bylaw number 2019-165 to reduce the speed limit on Kincardine Ave, South Line, to 60 kilometers an hour from Highway 21 easterly for 800 meters. Moved and seconded by Councillors Kavanaugh and Deputy Mayor Clark. Corey, would you like to speak to this, or is Adam online? Oh, there he is. Director, would you like to speak to this or just answer any questions?
Through you, Mayor Craig, I can simply answer questions if there are any. I think the report's pretty straightforward in what we're looking for.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Bruce Ave Reconstruction Tender Award. We need a mover and seconder. The council award the contract for project number 9164 Bruce Ave Reconstruction to Omega Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $2,135,363.75, inclusive of the non-refundable portion of HST. Moved by Councillors Steinhoff Gray and Blackwell. Any questions? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a comment that is, unless my reading is way off, very nicely to see this looks to be comfortably under budget, which is a rarity, but a good thing these days.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Yes, I'm off mute. Once again, it's nice to see some common sense coming back into. We had 4 good sort of tenders, and they're very close together and everything. And like Councillor Mike was saying, is that this thing is under budget. So job well done, team. Thank you.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. And this is a question through the chair for the director. Just for the public's information, can he describe a little bit of how far the work will be proceeding down Bruce Ave? I know this is one that is highly anticipated from that Stonehaven subdivision, and just maybe provide just a little bit of the scope of the work.
You heard the question, Director?
I did, and thank you, through you, Mayor Craig. So the scope of work, it will encompass full reconstruction from the intersection at Park Street easterly to Highway 21. So in that, there are a couple properties that are fronting Bruce Ave that'll be receiving new water services, as well as hooking them up to sanitary. Back when the Stonehaven subdivision was pieced together in terms of the planning process, there was a commitment made that those sites would be serviced with wastewater at a time of reconstruction. And then beyond that, simply we'll be bringing that area to an urban cross section. So it will emulate what's there between Park and Princess Street that was previously reconstructed. The cross section aligns with the master cycling plan with the inclusion of cycling lanes on both sides, and they'll extend easterly out to the most eastern road connection for the new subdivision. There's a sidewalk that is going to be placed on the north side from Park Street out to the new subdivision. And then we're converting it to an urban cross section with curb and gutter. There's storm sewer additions that are added. The last big component, I guess, that relates to discussion publicly and amongst council previously, is that at the intersection at Park Street, there will be a PXO that'll be included within that. So flashers and the push buttons and whatnot, and all the accompanying paint markings and signage. Actually, real quick too, being that we're on it, right now we're waiting on firm dates, but looking like sometime in August for a start, and we should be done by sometime in October. And during construction works, the contractor will be shutting down Bruce Ave for public access from Wick to Highway 21, just to make life a little simpler, I guess, from a constructability perspective and shorten up the time frame. But two, given both the dust challenges and the condition of the existing corridor that we have a challenge with grading and potholes now, felt it was in the best interest of the public for that period of time.
All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Landfill compactor tender, we need a mover and seconder that council award the contract to Marcel Equipment Limited in the amount of $555,609.60, including the non-refundable HST for the purchase of one reconditioned 2020 CAT landfill compactor. Moved by councillors Inchberger and Blackwell. Owen Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, Councillor Stewart.
Yes, Corey, I think, has this report. Corey did a great job. This was a problem. I knew there was a problem. And you guys actually, I don't know how you did it, but you pulled it in within budget and we're going to get a new compactor. So well done. That was an extremely tough one, but it's going to be a real blessing in disguise. So well done on the whole contract. Thank you.
Further questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Drinking water quality management system operational plan revision. Need a mover and seconder that council endorse both the Municipality of Kincardine Drinking Water Quality Management System Operational Plan Revision 11 from 11 May 2024 and the Quality Management System Policy Revision 3 May 4th, 2022. Moved and seconded by Councillor Hinchberger and Councillor Prenger. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Road dedication bylaw, Institute Road Extension. Need a mover and seconder that the Council of the Municipality of Kincardine pass a road dedication bylaw for Cedar Lane, Plan 485 Kincardine, and Red Pine Street, Plan 485 Kincardine, and further that the lands described as Cedar Lane, Plan 485 Kincardine be known as Institute Road Extension, and whereas the lands described as Red Pine Street, Plan 485 Kincardine is already known as Institute Road, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents on behalf of the municipality. Moved and seconded by Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, and Deputy Mayor Clark. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Road assumption and road naming bylaw, Caden Drive, Tiverton. We need a mover and seconder that the Council of the Municipality of Kincardine pass a road dedication bylaw for parts 1 and 2 on 3R 10512, which is part of PIN number there. The lands described as parts 1 and 2 be known as Caden Drive, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements on behalf of the municipality. Councillors Steinhoff, Gray, and Hinchberger, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Cannot Park Diamond Lighting Upgrades Contract Award. Need a mover and seconder that council award the contract for the supply and installation of the Cannot Park Ball Diamond Lighting Retrofit Upgrades to 928277 Ontario Limited, Weber's Electric, in the amount of $216,155. Further, the cost overage of $16,155 be funded from the Community Benefits Reserve Fund. Moved by councillors Blackwell and Hinchberger. Discussion. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I know one of the councillor members lives pretty close to this. Were you given an opinion or anything? What time do the lights actually are going to go off? Could you actually help us out, Mike?
So let's go with Mike, the municipal employee that's looking after this. So.
That'd be fine too. Thank you.
Thanks, and through you, Mayor. The light timing won't change, so it'll be 11 p.m. as it is right now. And actually, we'll have a little bit more control over making sure those lights are off with the changes.
All in favor? And that's carried. Energy conservation and demand management plan. We need a mover and seconder that council review the draft energy conservation and demand management plan for consideration of adoption at its June 26, 2024 meeting. Moved by councillors Blackwell and Hinchberger. Would you like to comment on this or just answer questions, or what would you like to do?
I'm happy to take questions.
Any particular questions? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'm just wondering, this focuses on facilities. Is there an opportunity, or is it not within the legislative requirement to potentially record things like our transportation related energy usage as well?
Through you, Mayor, your assumption about how this is applied is correct. So we're only mandated to deal with facilities that are heated or cooled and review that with respect to the regulation, and water and wastewater treatment plants. So that's in order to comply with the requirement. This is the only areas we've looked at.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just the key point for me in there is the good news story since 2012 that energy consumption's down almost 30% and greenhouse gases by 60. So that's a positive story, and let's keep moving forward.
Further questions? All in favor? And that's carried. So that means it will come back for adoption at our June 26th meeting. All right, we have a notice of motion given prior to the meeting, and that is moved by Amanda Steinoff Gray and seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that council reconsider resolution March 27, 2024, 16, that the community safety and policing agreement bylaw be deemed to be read first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered. 2024-045. No, no. Yeah, okay, Councillor Steinoff Gray, you get, we're in the discussion. So the debate is not about the officer. The debate on this motion is about the reconsideration. Well, no, I just wanted to make it clear so that we're not going to wander off on this one. So
I'm not planning on wandering off. Through you, Chair. I want to be really clear. When I made this motion of reconsideration pending the delegation that was brought forward by the parents of St. Anthony's and here, Elgin Market Schools, and the concerns that we had, for those of us that were in strong support of that program, it was based off of a concern of taking away something without replacing it with another support for those youth. Since this has happened, and obviously we've had delegations, I've had a number of presentations with very viable program options that could be in place by September to replace this resource. So I would be willing to consider withdrawing my motion, as it's the end of June, like we're mid-June here. The school year is almost done. This was forced on us by very bad timing. They should have let us go to the end of the school year before disrupting everything with this decision. It's very unfortunate the way this is unraveled. But for me, we have till September to get a really solid option in place. So as opposed to going for a vote of reconsideration, I think right now we just focus on the programs that have been suggested and wait for those delegations to come before our council, and then make sure that we are taking appropriate action prior to September when school commences. That's it.
good presentation, but what was the, what you're withdrawing your motion? So at that point, we need to go to the seconder, which is Mr. Councillor Kavanaugh. And do you choose to support that or not? Because without your approval, then it doesn't get withdrawn. Well, yeah, it does.
Could
like
you
if
put your mic on, please?
Sorry, I was just, through the chair, I was just questioning that because I was not able to be the primary on this because I was not in the majority for the first one. And so even if I opposed it and Amanda withdrew, then what would happen procedurally?
Are you saying that you're withdrawing your support from this motion,
I,
one way or the other?
I will agree with my fellow counselor here and, what she wants, I'm okay with.
So you're withdrawing your second?
Sure.
Okay, so the motion is been removed from the floor. Review of sign bylaw and sidewalk bylaw, moved by Andrea Clark and seconded by Beth Blackwell. Whereas the current sign bylaw and sidewalk bylaw requires provisions to adequately address accessibility, and the council directs staff to review the current signage bylaw and sidewalk bylaw to properly take account of the intended purpose of the AODA, Human Rights Code and Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now therefore be it resolved that staff bring a report addressing possible amendments to rectify any deficiencies in the current signage bylaw and sidewalk bylaw with specific reference to section 4.8 of the signage bylaw and section 2.0 of the sidewalk bylaw. Moved by, and that is moved by Andrea Clark and Beth Blackwell. Deputy Mayor, would you like to comment on this?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I think it's self-explanatory, but just to perhaps address some of my thinking along the lines is that currently there's concerns that with regards to accessibility, there are oftentimes, for instances, where sandwich boards are erected not in the utility path, and that there are the potentials for other obstacles in the pathway. When we're looking at accessibility, I think it's quite clear what the intention of legislation is that we do all that we can to ensure that our municipality is as accessible as possible for every user. So what the motion really focuses on is for staff to perhaps have a review of any areas that may or may not, that may be able to be improved and consistent with the other bylaws that we have, but the real focus is to ensure that we do more than just the bare minimum, that there is clear guidance now with legislation, whatever we look at, whether it's the AODA, if we go further, there is really an onus on us to be proactive in ensuring accessibility. And when we talk as a council or as a community about being inclusive, that is a key factor. So whilst I appreciate we're heading towards the summer, it's something that I think needs to be reviewed in any event. So that's what the motion, that's my intention for the motion, is to have staff take a look at it.
Further questions? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I agree we have a review. Are you expecting, I guess, with this review that the staff is going to bring back cost associated with some of this review? Or are you just expecting a review of the existing bylaw with some recommended changes? Because, you know, we need to understand the cost associated. Is that what we're expecting? Thank you.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, please.
My intention, Councillor Stewart, was that we look at any recommended changes that can be made to the existing bylaws.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, it's a question for Deputy Mayor Clark. It's not explicitly mentioned here, but I'm assuming that, and I don't know whether the AODA, the Human Rights Code, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms will cover everything, but that just we've adopted the London Facility Accessibility Design Standards. I don't know if we need to explicitly put it in the motion, but your expectation that any review done by staff is going to look at everything that we've adopted, period, correct?
That's correct. And perhaps it does need to be amended to be put into the motion, but the expectation would be that when staff look at it with the factor that I'm saying, that we do more than the bare minimum with clear guidance as to what the bare minimum is. And with the understanding that we have adopted the London FADs, that plays a part in the consideration of any recommendations for the amendment. So I'm happy for that to be amended if necessary, but I know that staff is fully aware that that would be the expectation.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to support Deputy Mayor Clark on this. I think we have a beautiful new streetscape downtown, and some of the specific sections referenced here have outdated or old measurements specifically that no longer would align with the AODA. So I don't know that there's big changes that need to happen, more so just making sure that they're aligned and so that there's clarity for residents and businesses of exactly what's allowed and what's not allowed, because I think everyone does a little bit better when there's clear guidelines. And I think that we could just take a quick look to make sure that we're being as proactive as and clear as we can.
Further comments? Councillor Stewart, please.
I agree with, through you, Chair, and to the Deputy Mayor, I agree that we can take a look at it. But if we find deficiencies, you know, are you planning to move forward with a budget thing next year to change them? I mean, you know, it's great to change something, but we know there's going to be a cost associated with it. So, you know, why do one without the other? I think you're wasting our time instead of, if you're planning to move ahead with the fads or anything, we need to understand what the costs are so we can put it in our budget for 25. Thank you.
If I may, I think the deputy mayor's concern are not so much the dimensions of the new streetscape itself, but rather any obstacles that have been placed on the street, whether through advertising or entertainment or anything like that. Am I speaking correct? Do I understand your intent correctly, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Mayor. Through you, Councillor Stewart, I think the real thrust of the motion is to see what amendments can be done relatively swiftly, which is why part of the motion makes specific reference to both sections in the sign bylaw as well as the sidewalk bylaw. Well, I take your point that there are potentially some costs associated with it, depending upon if there is deficiencies and what the degree of those deficiencies are. Some of this can be done. For instance, when I gave the example of the sandwich boards and perhaps placing them on the utility strip with minimal cost. I think Councillor Stewart is trying. Can you hear me, Councillor Stewart? You seem to be speaking, and okay. So I think the thought process at this stage is to have the review to identify if there are any deficiencies. I take your point, Councillor Stewart, that there may be costs to eradicating or to rectifying deficiencies, but there are certainly going to be some that I think can be dealt with in the very near future, which will bear minimal, if any, cost.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Sorry, thank you. Through you, I just think that my comment would be that the intention behind the motion when I was speaking with Deputy Mayor Clark wasn't any kind of capital changes. It was more around provisions of where we allow signage and what we may allow on the existing sidewalks. It's not about changing any of the physical elements that we have in terms of municipal ownership. It's more just about clearing up what's permitted and what may not be permitted or where.
Councillor Stewart, please.
I'm hoping through this discussion and, you know, with asking the staff, we're going to get the BIA involved. We're going to get the Chamber of Commerce involved, because this needs to be a whole group sort of understanding what the pros and cons are and, you know, what the standards are and where we're going to move. I'm looking forward to the report, and I will support moving forward with getting the new report. Thank you.
And I will support the motion too, as long as we put a date on it. Because the question that arises in my mind, which we address frequently, is what is it that you do not want staff to do while they are reviewing the policy about signs? And please don't say, well, we'll just add it on top, because unless I miss my guess, most of them know what they're going to be doing for the next week, 2 weeks, month. Part of that includes holidays and regular life things. So in my mind, yes, great idea. But the reality is by the time we do a proper discussion with BIA, proper discussion with chamber, proper discussions in staff, summer's gonna be over. This is a project that happens for next summer in my mind, not this summer. So I'm not sure where council is on that. If someone would afford a recommendation of a date that you would like this report back by, and then also a recommendation, okay, these are the strategic things that we don't want you to do while you're doing this. That's the recommendation that I need a counselor to give before I'm gonna support this motion. I agree with the intent, don't get me wrong. Put some timelines and some reality in it, please, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think from my position, the timelines, well, the reality was put in by identifying specific sections as opposed to an overall review of the bylaws. So I appreciate the point that you make. From my perspective, I was very mindful of not perhaps putting a time frame on to create the extra burden of staff. If that is what is being requested, then I'd want the input of staff on that.
You like to offer some thoughts, some guidance, please?
Sure. So through you, Mayor. Yes, I would note that this is likely a fairly significant review, acknowledging that there are specific sections that are being identified here with respect to each of the two bylaws, but it's with reference to other legislation and the Ontario Human Rights Code, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So we already have in our work plan a review planned for patio, the policy with respect to patios. It also deals with things that are placed on sidewalks. Through that, we may likely have had some review associated with these two other bylaws. But that review on its own was only planned for the fall of this year. So it was something that we were intending to review, but it does cross multiple departments. It does cross other impacted parties. So if it was to be something that was to happen this year, I still would expect that we would need some legal advice, outside engineering, and outside consulting with respect to AODA. Unless the direction is more with respect to, we're looking for a clear path that is straight of travel in a very specific section. If that's the intent, that's a very different motion in my mind, but I don't know that that is the same spot for the mover and the seconder, and if it's confined to one specific area in the downtown.
Deputy Mayor, please.
I wonder if the CAO can specify a date, if that's what's being requested on the premise of the first outline in relation to the patio and the crossover that is anticipated with the sidewalk and the signage bylaws. If that's all going to be reviewed at one point, and I think you have indicated that there will be crossover, I wonder if you can specify the date, because that's what I think is being requested by the council.
I would expect that to be something that would be reviewed starting in Q3 and would take us Q3, Q4, and picking it back up sometime after the budget cycle next year, if that's the process that you wish to follow with all of those three items being reviewed.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Could, number three. So this motion only relates, I appreciate CAO's comments. This motion relates to the signage and the sidewalk bylaw. But bearing in mind that you have indicated it's likely to cross over on the anticipated patio review. Sorry, I've kind of missed the end date because I know the mayor was keen to get a date. Is there a date in mind that you could say when that review would be completed?
So my best estimate would be that it would be in Q2 of next year.
In preparation for the sidewalk season in 2025.
for clarification, would that be brought back to council by Q2 then?
Yes, that's correct.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I certainly had hoped and anticipated that we could have had something back prior to then. I appreciate that there is a workload, and I suspect that if there is already going to be a review of the patio bylaws, that while it's unfortunate, that I would be okay with an amendment if we look at setting that timeframe. As I've said, it seems it's unfortunate because we are already heading in towards the summer and probably will have missed this opportunity. No doubt we can continue to advocate for best practice in the intervening period, but I'm happy for this to be amended for Q2 for it to be brought back to council.
Councillor Blackwell, you are the seconder. Are you in concurrence with the proposed amendment?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Through you. I'm wondering, given the specific mentions and some of the reading that I've done, whether those specific elements can simply have language around, like this one says that sandwich boards shall be restricted to 76 centimeters encroachment onto the sidewalk in front of buildings. Whether we can just amend that language, whether we need to go through a full review, because I think that's where there's been some confusion for businesses is we can encourage best practice certainly, but I'm still unclear how the timeline aligns with perhaps just changing some of the smaller bits of wording temporarily and then doing a full review aligning with the rest of it. I'm just wondering if.
So I'm not part of the municipal staff, but I'm sitting here thinking that we're in the middle of June and that this change to be some sort of effective, legal, purposeful bylaw shift is like August. Summer's over. It doesn't happen quickly, Councillor Blackwell. I hear what you're saying. So the question remains, are you in agreement with the Deputy Mayor's amendment recommendation or not, or not? Like you can be not, and that's fine too.
Through you, I wonder if there could be some clarification on perhaps what kind of outreach can be done in between the changes to the bylaw in Q2 of next year and what we're doing perhaps this summer to ensure our legal responsibility to accessibility. How are we going to, or is there going to be outreach efforts ongoing to ensure that there's access, even if our bylaws have not yet had a full review?
Excuse me, point of order, Mayor, through you. That's a simple yes or no question. She's trying to make an amendment to the motion, and I'm sorry, it's a yes or no. Are you going to second it or not? Thank you.
I would concur with the challenge. It was a simple yes or no question, so.
Yes, fine. Yep.
So we have an amended motion that council direct staff to review the current signage bylaw, including the FADS, AOADA, Human Rights Code, Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the CAO indicated and included an in-depth review of patios, signage, the whole thing. Report back to council Q2 next year. I respect your question that you asked. We do have a representative on the BIA. We have communications with the Chamber of Commerce, and it is not a challenging thing to begin a conversation and identify that there are some challenges with a clear passage down the street too. So we can work in conjunction with those partner organizations to identify and hope alleviate some of the identified challenges. All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Notice of motion at the meeting. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I have two. One is, I'm going to give notice that I intend to bring a motion to the next meeting related to the destination of the 2023 operating surplus. And the second is that I intend to bring a motion forward related to preparing or amending a communications policy, specifically in the area of external communications. And I understand, based on this discussion that just happened, that I'll be discussing with staff what would be an appropriate time frame for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to use this opportunity to provide a advance notice to the council as a notice of motion that I will be bringing a motion next council for asking for support and advocating to our provincial representatives to help resolve some of the issues with regards to the Police Services Board and the issues surrounding insurability.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything else? All right, we have some bylaws to consider. We need a mover and seconder that the Victim Service Bruce Gray agreement bylaw be deemed to be read first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-085, moved by Councillors Hinchberger and Steinoff Gray. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Kincardine Lions Club agreement. We need a mover and seconder that the Kincardine Lions Club agreement bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2024-086, moved by Councillors Hinchberger and Kavanaugh. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Appoint David Culp as building inspector. We need a mover and seconder that the appoint David Culp as building inspector bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-87, moved by Councillors Blackwell and Stewart. Discussion? All in favor? And that was carried. Motion to pass bylaws. Resolution, we need a mover and seconder that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, third time, finally passed 12th of June 2024. Amendment to zoning bylaw 2003-25 for 5031 Highway 9, the Oudshorn bylaw, development charge interest policy bylaw, traffic and parking bylaw amendment, Bruce Avenue tender bylaw, award the landfill compactor tender bylaw, road assumption and naming bylaw, road assumption and naming Caden Drive bylaw, award the Connaught Park lighting tender bylaw. Moved and seconded by Councillors Hinchberger and Blackwell. All in favor? And that's carried. Matters for information. The consent agenda items are listed under this agenda and are considered routine. The exception is that a council member may request one or more to be removed for a separate discussion this evening or in the future. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. Just as an item 8.1 alpha, the request for noise exemption, rock with your docks. My wonderful wife is one of those docks that will be rocking as part of the fundraiser, so I have to declare a non-pecuniary conflict of interest on that one and remove myself from that noise exemption. Thank you.
Okay, so we will, okay, Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. I'd like to extract 8.1 Bravo Delta or BD, the Environmental Services Compliance Report.
Comment, question?
Was trying to think of the agenda, if there's a more appropriate time to maybe talk about the current state of Kincardine wastewater treatment plant and path forward.
Manager, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Craig, through you. So as some of you are aware through correspondence and ratepayers that there's been some complaints and concerns brought forward pertaining to odors at the Kincardine Lagoon site. That site has undergone some significant upgrades. I believe it started in late 2022 and finished up in right around this time last year in 2023. Part of those upgrades included new aeration equipment, which is in the aerated cell, and blowers within the building as well as the building itself. Those upgrades, we have continued to work with our engineering and the contractor that installed the aeration equipment to try to maintain the spec that was provided to us. And at this point, we haven't had success in the hotter months in obtaining the dissolved oxygen levels we want in the pond. As dissolved oxygen goes through the winter months, it certainly climbs with colder temperatures. And as we headed into the spring session and towards the end of the maintenance of this contract, we decided to run the blowers and equipment as spec'd. It has not performed as we had hoped, and we are now again running a second blower to drive more oxygen into the ponds. We believe there's a possibility that the old sludge that has accumulated in the bottom of that cell would become airborne in the water or suspended in the water as the new aeration system has fired up, which in turn would turn over some old sludge. We certainly expected those results when we brought the system online. Part of the bonus, I guess, to that would be that quite often in old aerated or lagoon ponds in general, you would get mounds of sludge where it wasn't moved, and it would result in a short circuit in your treatment process. So we were aware that we anticipated this was going to happen. The thought right now is that maybe some of that sludge is still suspended at this point or moving around. But we are working to drive up the dissolved oxygen levels, which will help in the treatment process. And then we'll continue to work with the engineering firm and aeration supplier to reduce odors and issues around that site.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess I have one question that I'd like to understand, and maybe you can't help me understand it, but I'll ask. When we did the engineering analysis for the upgrades that we did, like, were there any unknowns or things that have changed that could have thrown those calculations based on what we're seeing? Because my understanding is we respect something based on our current circumstances, and it's not meeting the intent as delivered by the engineering analysis. So I'd just like to understand if something changed, like why we're here.
Yep, and through you, Mayor Craig. So I would say that the suspension of sludge or movement of that sludge would be anticipated initially off the start or whatever. I think there's a bit of a surprise at this point that it's continued into the spring of this year. I wasn't here for the initial start of this project, but I believe, and moving forward, we have a proposal put forward for 2025 capital considerations. Not only the Kincardine site, but the Tiverton site, wastewater sites are starting to get in need of sludge removal from each one of these cells. So late last year, we put out some correspondence through the newsletters looking for land application purposes. So you have options with sludge, and one of the options is to apply it to land. We just put out an initial feeler to see if there was any interest locally in that type of work. We did not receive any calls at all. So through that process, we actually have a company coming in the week of the 24th here of June. They will give us a accurate review of our sludge levels. They also collect samples, and then they can determine things like the density of the sludge and what it's going to take to dewater. I am considering, I guess, being back at the table maybe later this year to get council's support to move forward with a project which actually keeps the solids on site. So you actually pump into a bag, which allows the bag to then dewater back to the ponds for further treatment. So the sludge is captured, but the water goes back for further treatment. I've had success with these projects in the past. The benefit to it is at this point, the sludge can actually then go to landfill for either final cover or cover of garbage in general. But based on the lack of interest on land application, that is a project that we're certainly looking at. So yeah, we may have some better understanding towards the end of June if what our sludge levels are. That is the smallest pond on that site and typically only holds about 20,000 cubic meters of volume. So we believe we're in the 6,000 cubic meter range right now for sludge, which is getting to a threshold where we need to start doing something with it.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's a two-parter. The first part is our chemistry and spec right now, like dissolved oxygen and aeration, probably as much importantly, effluent criteria, what's going out to the lake. And the second is, are we trending in the right direction and realizing it's difficult to balance a sewage treatment plant and what bugs do? Do we have any kind of like ballpark idea of when we might see some clean air?
Through you, Mayor Craig. So trending wise on the effluent, things for the most part look normal for this type of year or time of year type of thing. Our criteria has been really good. I believe we did have an exceedance of suspended solids 3 weeks ago. So our limit is 40. I believe we were at 43. So that is considered an exceedance. But overall, UV process and the effluent criteria heading out is good. As far as process and change, I would say that we are just maybe starting to see some trending now that our oxygen is climbing. That being said, it is difficult to predict with the wastewater treatment plant and with hot weather. Hot weather is obviously a big factor in how much oxygen is used up, but we are certainly looking at some other options as well. We could look at things like trash pumps in there, which would in theory just pump the sewage out of the pond and back into the pond and catches air. That is an opportunity. We could also look for some other aeration options as well.
With follow up with the hot weather coming, hotter weather, I would strongly suggest that we might want to have some of those contingency plans in our back pocket. Thanks.
Councillor Stanoff-Gray.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just something that you had said. I know we're realizing the impacts of this situation, and there's a lot of folks that are not particularly thrilled about it. But one of the questions I would have, because you mentioned the impact of warmer weather, and we are going through climate change, like, have we considered any risks to any of the analysis that we have based on this changing climate? Like, we are having warmer temperatures, we are having more storms than we've normally seen. I know a lot of other industries are doing climate impact assessments, and I'm not sure whether we've done a similar thing to see how we are shoring up to make sure we're, I guess what I'm trying to say is prepared for the evolving climate.
Through you, Mayor Craig. So I can't necessarily speak to a specific study that we've completed, but we are always looking at the trending, I guess, in the industry type of thing. So part of the new aeration system, the previous aeration system had surface aeration, which drove the water down from atmosphere and the surface. The new system actually sits towards the bottom of the pond. So it has like an 8-inch lifter off the bottom of the pond, sits on the bottom of the pond and draws up through it. Part of those systems now include coarse and fine bubble diffusion, which is kind of bigger in the industry now and works towards, as mentioned previous, like better and equal distribution throughout your pond, better treatment, and the goal is obviously to get better oxygen. But yeah, we are struggling at this point, and we're going to continue to keep working at it.
Further items from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we need a mover and seconder that council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated June 12, 2024, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Moved by councillors Stewart and Blackwell. All in favor? And that is carried. Member of Council General Announcements. Councillor Steinoff Gray, please.
Thank you through you. I would just mention that I saw yesterday, or actually this morning at Quick K, advertisements for Shiverton. They are selling Krispy Kreme donuts. So if anyone's interested in that fundraising attempt, the details are there. And Catch the Ace is very exciting thing in the Tiverton community. So supporting our Lions. So they caught the ace. That was today. Where have I been? Obviously, it wasn't me that won. Darn it. Okay, well, that's all I have for today. Thanks.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I've got a couple things to highlight. The first is on June 19th, the municipality of Kincardine is hosting a workshop on the history and land from our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit perspectives from 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. On June 21st, Rock with Your Docs will be happening at the Davidson Center. I know I will be there, and I encourage you all to come out and have a great time. And the party doesn't stop that weekend, because on June 22nd, we have Kincardine Pride and the Pride Parade, which kicks off at 11 a.m. Once that parade's done, we go down to Dunsmore Park and McPherson Park, and the celebrations continue until 4 p.m. So we have a great couple events coming up this weekend. I hope everyone is out and enjoys them. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I have no announcements.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I was looking at Councillor Kavanaugh over there in his shirt, and I was thinking that one of the things that he would identify just by the rainbow would be the flag raising ceremonies coming this Friday, roughly between 10 and 12, in support of Pride. And I know that my colleague, Councillor Blackwell, has written an excellent post recently about just how not very far you have to look to see the comments of some people in society to realize it's not only required, but still our obligation to show support for marginalized communities that some people in our community still want to marginalize. So my message would be, as long as you're going to do this, we're going to be there.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you. So Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority recently announced a change in leadership as our current general manager, Jennifer Stevens, decided to step down. And the authority is currently actively seeking a new general manager / secretary treasurer. And the job posting is officially through the Grey County website. It's also been posted in several other locations, as well as the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority website. So if anyone is aware of someone who might be interested in such a wonderful opportunity in a leadership role in the Conservation Authority, please encourage them to take a look and potentially apply. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. I have two announcements. Yes, I was participating at 4 o'clock. Catch the Ace. They found the ace finally, Ace of Spades, and Regan Carruthers actually won, and she will be taking home $202,730.50. So congratulations to her. And I just want to thank all the community for participating in it. Another thing, Manager Laurie over there, I see you, is that I'd like to thank her and her staff for putting on the first annual Canada Day over in Tiverton on June 30th. It's going to be a movie night. The Tiverton Lions and the municipality are partnering with it. We're looking for a great sort of audience, and come and watch the movie at night. And if you need any more details, it's on both of our Facebook pages. So thanks, Laurie, and your staff for putting that all together. We're really excited about it.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. I'm going to take a deep breath because I've got All right. So the first is, I know Councillor Steinhoff-Gray knows about these, but she didn't mention them, so I'll get to add them to mine, which is the Father's Day beef dinner hosted by the Tiverton Agricultural Society. She did mention it to me previously, so happy Father's Day to everyone and out there who is a father or a father figure. The second is they're also hosting a almost summer preteen dance on June 21st. I wanted to share that I am so excited for the first Kincardine Scottish Pipe Band Parade down the New Main Street on the 22nd. Charlie is old enough finally to stay up late and walk, so I'm very excited for that. And lastly, next week, I'm headed to the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals Conference in Ottawa. The theme this year is Vision Zero in rural communities, so I'm really excited to learn more about traffic safety. That's not something you hear people say every day, but I am very excited about it. So thanks very much.
Just to add on to some of those things, one of our partner organizations, Nuclear Innovation Institute, has been using a unique co-op program where rather than the children or the students going to the businesses, there is a central classroom and the businesses come to them for a particular week. So it's carpenters, electricians, masons, it's and the showcase is at local 2222 on Queen Street tomorrow morning. Kincardine Lions celebration is this coming Saturday evening. There's a dinner out at Ainsdale Park, and we congratulate our local Lions Club for the success that they've demonstrated. And yeah, thanks for the reminder about the dinner, Councillor Blackwell. That's something that I'm sure my family would love to take me to. So now that they know about it, so CAO.
Sure, just a couple of things. I wanted to acknowledge the finance team because they're one of the 60 odd municipalities that have submitted the FIR financial information return out of 444 municipalities on time. So I do think kudos goes out to both Director Bauman as well as the Deputy Treasurer for ensuring that gets in on time on behalf of the municipality. I also wanted to note that the operations team will be getting the planters and trees that are one of those beautiful elements of that new reconstruction project that we're talking about should be out by this weekend. So we'll look forward to that.
All right, we need a mover and seconder that council move into closed meeting for the purpose of education or training members, specifically applying cultural competency into everyday practices and decisions pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended, and further that council return to regular open meeting upon completion. Moved by councillors Steinhoff, Gray, and Kavanaugh. All in favor? That's carried.